Hey vinyl fans, welcome to another episode of Let's Clean a Record. You know, no matter how well you clean a record, if you're dealing with a crappy recording, there's not much that's going to improve on that. And no cleaning in the world is going to make a bad record sound good. So today I thought we would talk about how to improve your chances of getting the best sounding pressing of any particular record. We could talk about reissues, and in many ways we're living in the golden age of audiophile reissues. Not all the best reissue companies are still with us. I think of DCC Compact Classics. Oh my goodness, did they produce beautiful sounding reissues. There's Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs still doing their thing, and despite the fact they occasionally use a digital step, their reissues can sound fantastic. There's of course Acoustic Sound, Chad Kassem's operation. Some of the best sounding records ever made come from there. You have craft recordings. You have label-specific reissues like the Tone Poet series from Blue Note. Fantastic sounding stuff there. But if those reissues, if that's all we were dealing with, well, that's easy. They're easy to identify. However, if you're dealing with old records and you want to find the best quality sounding record you can, you probably want to look for the original pressing from the country of origin, the country where it was actually recorded. And determining that can be very difficult. Sometimes it's the most subtle of things. For instance, the font on the label. One font will tell you it's a second pressing versus a first pressing. Maybe it's a little ridge on the label. Maybe it's something in the run-out groove. You have to be a bit of a detective. There's no one source that can tell you this is the original pressing for everything that's ever been put out. That just doesn't exist. There are several sources, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Various ways of determining, do you have the original pressing? Why do you want the original pressing? Well, most importantly, it's because the original pressing is going to have used the original master tape. That comes from the mastering engineer. You start with the recording engineer, then a mixing engineer will take all those channels and bring them down to, in the case of stereo, a 2-channel recording. Then it goes to a mastering engineer who sort of creates the album, the sequence of the songs, the number of seconds between songs, the fade in, the fade out, and most importantly, the EQ. Once the mastering engineer has done their job, that's the tape that goes to the pressing plant, and that's what we want, the original master tape. The record companies are not going to send that original master tape all over the world to serve markets elsewhere. It's too valuable. They'll make copies of it, and sometimes copies of copies. And every time you make a copy, you degrade the sound a little bit. This is why we want the original master recording to have been used for your pressing. And then secondly, you want to try to get the pressing that came off of the first stamper. Once a stamper is used a certain number of times, it begins to wear. They will redo it for a second, third, and fourth. Depends on how popular the record is, but they can go through many stampers. You want to get the original stamper, the earliest pressings off of the original stamper if possible. Again, determining that can be very, very difficult. So we're going to talk about all the sources that we know of to determine what pressing are you looking at. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below. How do you determine whether or not you have an original pressing? So let's get to it. Let's determine how we get the best sounding records we can possibly find. So one of the most popular websites that can help you determine whether you have an original pressing or some reissue is Discogs. It's a very popular site. You probably have heard of it. It's a great place to buy and sell records. You can also catalog your own collection there. But most importantly for our purposes today is there is a lot of information on that website and similar sites to Discogs such as Rate Your Music. There's information on there to help you determine what constitutes an original pressing. However, I would urge you to take that site with a grain of salt because it's not necessarily experts that are putting that information out there. Someone can say that they have the original pressing when in fact it is not. I've seen that myself. But it is there are a lot of trades that take place on Discogs, so it's worth checking into. You will find helpful information there, but I think there are better ways to run down what is an original pressing. Let's get to those next. Another good source of information are websites dedicated to valuing records. One I like is called PopPsych. By the way, we'll put links below to all of these websites that we're mentioning. PopPsych is an aggregator of record values. They take what records have sold for on eBay, at auction houses, places like that, and they'll help you determine what the value of the record is. But it's the associated information along with that that can be helpful in determining whether or not you have an original pressing. Check out sites like PopPsych and other sites that value records. You can find good information there as well. Another great source of information is to ask fellow audiophiles and record collectors what they think. Go to forums like Steve Hoffman or Audio Asylum. Reddit has a vinyl collectors forum as well. If you take a picture of your label and what's in the runout groove, perhaps of the jacket as well, there will be guys who will know whether or not that is an original pressing and can give you helpful advice. So that's another good source of information. Another great source of information comes from books. And for you young people out there, this is a book. It's made of paper and it has words on it, okay? Now, this is from Goldmine. There's two here from Goldmine, one for jazz and one for pop and rock records. I think it's pronounced Goldmine.
I think so.
Maybe Goldman, I'm not sure. These are focused on valuation of records, but in doing so, they provide a lot of helpful information that can help you identify what's an original pressing. So ditto for UK records, Record Collector, if you're into collecting records from the United Kingdom, this is a great source. This is an old one, as you can tell, from 97, but all these books are still being produced. They have 2024 at least copies out there. I believe they also offer subscriptions to their websites if you want to go that route and not deal with the paper. But they're good sources of information that can help you identify original pressings. Ditto for review books. This is the Penguin Guide to Jazz. If you're a jazz guy, you must have this book. A great source, finding good sound or quality recordings. I should say from a performance perspective is really what they focus on. But they will also talk about the quality of the recording and again provide helpful information to identify the original pressing. So not necessarily a definitive guide for original pressing identification, but very helpful. So if you come across any of these books used, pick them up, because who cares if the value is out of date? The point is to help you find the original pressing, so they're good sources of info. The last category of information we want to discuss, it's really my favorite. These are label-specific websites. They record label specific. They will get into some nitty-gritty detail and show you pictures of labels and how they progress throughout the years, what fonts to look for, what to look for in the runout groove. Very detailed oriented, and some of them have really unique niches. I want to mention a few that I've found helpful, but I hope you'll comment below as to what you think are the best label-oriented websites. One that comes to mind is C Vinyl, the letter C Vinyl. They have label guides for various labels out there, and I have found that website to be very helpful. There are also really niche-oriented label websites out there, like Capital6000.com. This website focuses exclusively on Capitol Records, Canadian pressings of Capitol Records, but only for the Beatles. So if you're a Beatles fan in Canada and you want the original pressing, the original Canadian pressings, that's a great website for you. There's one called 45rpmrecords.com. They focus on small labels in the Midwest of America. That's it. So really very niche oriented. There are band-specific sites. I'm thinking of pinkfloydarchives.com as one example. So if you're a Pink Floyd fan, check them out. They'll talk about all the various pressings from everything that Pink Floyd has put out. My favorite, however, is called londonjazzcollector.com. It isn't just jazz. They have the widest selection of record labels out there with all the details that I talked about earlier. Pictures of the labels, the runout grooves, what slight changes in font or where a label or where an address is placed will tell you whether it's an original pressing or not. That's a great source. And they don't just cover UK pressings. They do US, Japanese, European pressings. So a fantastic source of information for determining original pressings. Well, that's it. These are all the various sources that we are aware of that can help you determine your original pressing. Comment below. Tell us what you think. How do you determine what is an original pressing? When do you find that the original pressing is not necessarily the best? Usually is, but not always. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you at the next record.